Welcome to another deep dive. This time we're exploring financial freedom, Grant Sabatier's
Yeah,
book, and we're uncovering practical strategies to, well, achieve financial freedom faster. I think we all want that, right?
absolutely.
The interesting thing about Sabatier's approach is that he ditches the whole, restrictive budgeting idea,
Uh-huh.
and instead he focuses on optimizing your biggest expenses in your life. Get ready for some surprising strategies. We're even going to talk about how you could potentially live rent-free.
That's right. He calls it the only budget you'll ever need. And it all comes down to basically controlling those three big expenses that eat up most of our income: housing, transportation, and food.
So it's not about nickel and diming on
No.
every purchase, right? It's about being strategic with the big stuff.
Exactly.
Sabatier actually uses a great example in the book, this guy Travis, who's obsessed with finding deals.
Hmm.
Drives miles out of his way to save a few bucks on, I don't know, groceries, but then drops a huge chunk of change on a brand new car. Kind of ironic, right?
Exactly. And that's where a lot of people, I think, go wrong. They get caught up in saving pennies here and there, but miss the bigger picture.
Yeah.
Imagine if Travis had invested that money that he spent on the car instead of taking out a loan.
Right.
Even like a conservative 7% annual return could turn, let's say, $40,000 in savings
Hmm.
into over $160,000 in 20 years.
Whoa.
That's the power of compounding. Really highlights why, focusing on your biggest expenses is so important.
Yeah, you're making me rethink that new car I've been eyeing. But seriously, the book points out that for the average American household, housing, transportation, and food, it makes up something like 70% of their spendable income.
Yeah, huge chunk.
Yeah.
So even small adjustments in these areas can have a big impact in the long run. Think about it this way. Even finding an apartment that's just $400 cheaper per month
Mm-hmm.
can make a big difference.
Yeah, that doesn't sound too hard to do. I bet most people could find a place for $400 less.
Right. And that, seemingly small change
Yeah.
adds up to almost $5,000 saved annually. Live there for 3 years, that's over $14,000. But it gets even better. What if you took that $400 each month and invested it? Assuming that same 7% return, after 20 years, you'd have over $66,000, even without adding any extra contributions.
Wow, that's pretty eye-opening. It really emphasizes the power of making smart choices early on.
Definitely.
Sabatier actually shares a story about this lawyer named Anita,
Uh-huh.
who was really focused on retiring early. She was earning a good salary. But instead of letting her lifestyle inflate with her income, she chose to live with roommates to keep her housing costs low.
Smart.
Allowed her to invest a larger chunk of her income, and guess what? She retired at 33.
That's a great example of how, prioritizing those long-term goals over immediate gratification can pay off big time. It's not about deprivation. It's about making conscious choices with your money. Yeah. Now, you might be wondering, what are some practical ways to save on housing?
Exactly. I mean, sure, we could all downsize, get a roommate.
Sure.
But Sabatier goes a step further. He talks about living rent-free. I was really intrigued by this section of the book. At first, I thought it was going to be like some crazy, unrealistic advice,
Right.
but it's actually pretty practical.
Yeah. We're not talking about living in a tent.
Yeah.
He outlines 3 methods that, honestly, anyone could potentially use: house sitting, house hacking, and bartering.
Okay, house sitting, I get that. I've done that for friends and family before.
Yep.
But Sabatier suggests taking it to another level.
Exactly. He points out there are all these websites
Hmm.
that connect homeowners with house sitters all over the world.
Oh, cool.
People go on vacation, need someone to watch their pets, water their plants. You get free accommodation, sometimes in amazing places you wouldn't be able to afford otherwise.
And some of these gigs even pay you.
Exactly.
He mentions websites like Trusted House Sitters and Nomador. You create a profile, get a background check, and potentially live rent-free, even internationally.
It's perfect for people who want to, live more nomadic lifestyle or
Yeah.
are location independent.
Yeah.
But even if you prefer to stay in one place, you can find longer-term house-sitting arrangements.
Oh, nice.
So many options. Now, house hacking is a bit more involved, but it offers potentially huge returns, both in savings and income generation.
Yeah, that's the one where you buy a property, like a duplex or a small apartment building,
Right?
and rent out the units you don't need.
Right. The rental income covers your mortgage,
Yeah.
and ideally, it generates some extra cash flow. Sabatier even tells a story about a reader who bought an 8-unit apartment building at 24,
What?
ended up living rent-free, and made an extra $2,500 per month from the other tenants.
That's incredible, but I'm guessing that takes a lot of upfront capital.
It does, but it's a fantastic example of how thinking outside the box can lead to financial freedom.
Yeah.
And as the property value goes up, so does your net worth.
Hmm.
It's a win-win.
Yeah.
And then there's bartering, which is such an old-school concept, but Sabatier suggests applying it to housing.
Hmm.
You might be surprised at how many opportunities exist when you start to think creatively. Maybe you could be a live-in nanny or a caretaker for someone elderly in exchange for rent, or, offer property management services to a landlord. The possibilities are really endless.
It's all about using your skills and finding mutually beneficial arrangements. Okay, so we covered housing in depth. What about transportation? That's another huge expense for most people.
Absolutely. And it's not just the cost of gas. It's the car payments, insurance, maintenance. It all adds up. In fact, Sabatier mentions that Americans actually spend more on car loans than student loans.
Really? I find that surprising. I would have guessed it was the other way around.
Most people do. But it just goes to show how much we underestimate the true cost of owning a car. So if you're serious about saving money, Sabatier suggests taking a hard look at your transportation expenses.
So where do we even begin? Like, what's the most impactful step we can take?
Sabatier is pretty clear on this one. Ditch the obsession with new cars.
Yeah.
It's tempting to go for that, shiny new model.
Yeah.
But used cars offer so much more value, especially if you can pay in cash and avoid those hefty loan payments.
Right.
Think about it. The average monthly car payment in the U.S. is around $517. What if that money went straight into investments instead?
Yeah, let's break that down. Over 6 years, the typical length of a new car loan, that's almost $37,000 saved.
Right.
And if you invest that money and let it compound over, say, 20 years.
You're looking at a potential return of over $150,000.
Wow.
Pretty compelling, right?
Absolutely. That puts things into perspective. And even if you can't pay cash up front for a used car,
Right.
financing it will still result in a much smaller loan amount than a new car.
Of course.
Which means lower monthly payments and less interest overall.
Exactly. And let's not forget about all those hidden costs of car ownership. Sabatier points out that the average American spends almost $8,500 per year on things like gas, insurance, maintenance, and parking. Really adds up.
That's a significant expense that we often just overlook, I think.
Yeah.
So taking all of this into account, I guess the ultimate cost-saving measure would be to not own a car at all.
You read Sabatier's mind. Now, I know this isn't feasible for everyone, especially those living in areas without reliable public transportation, but for those who can make it work, it's definitely something to consider.
Yeah, I can see how that would free up a lot of money in your budget, not to mention reduce stress and wasted time commuting.
Absolutely.
Sabatier is a big advocate for, walking, biking, public transportation, ride sharing. And it's not just about, the financial savings. It's also about reclaiming your time.
Exactly. The average American spends 53 minutes commuting each day. That's almost an hour. Could be spent on something more productive or enjoyable.
Right.
Instead of, being stuck in traffic. You could be exercising, reading, working on a side hustle, spending time with loved ones. The possibilities are endless.
It's like getting an extra hour in your day.
Yeah.
Now, speaking of saving money and time, let's dive into one of Sabatier's most intriguing strategies, I think. Travel hacking.
Okay.
He claims to have paid for only a handful of flights in the past 7 years, despite traveling to over 20 countries.
Wow.
That sounds almost impossible.
It might sound too good to be true, but it's a real thing. Sabatier is basically an expert at it, and he lays out all his strategies in the book.
Okay.
It all starts with being strategic with your travel plans. Travel during the off-season when prices are lower. Be flexible with your dates and destinations. And consider flying into larger airports.
Yeah.
They often have more competitive fares. He even suggests booking one-way tickets instead of round trip, as they can sometimes be cheaper. And if you're traveling with a group, booking tickets individually can sometimes help you snag those limited quantity fare deals.
Yeah.
It's all about being savvy and knowing how the system works.
Yeah, and don't forget about the airline's dynamic pricing strategies.
Oh, yeah?
They often adjust prices based on demand and your browsing history.
Yeah.
Sabatier recommends clearing your cookies and using incognito mode when searching for flights
Yeah.
to ensure you're seeing the most accurate fares.
Good tip.
Yeah, I've definitely noticed that prices seem to go up the more I search for a particular flight.
Absolutely.
But what about travel rewards programs and credit card bonuses?
Yeah.
I've always been a bit hesitant to kind of delve into that world, as I know it can be risky if you're not careful.
Sabatier stresses that this strategy is only for those who are responsible with credit and pay their balances in full each month. It's not about racking up debt. It's about using credit strategically to your advantage.
So how does it work? What are the key things to keep in mind?
The basic idea is to find a base credit card with good rewards that you'll use for your everyday spending. And then you strategically sign up for promotional cards with large sign-up bonuses. Meet the minimum spending requirements to earn those bonuses, rack up points, and then cancel the card before any annual fees kick in.
That sounds pretty clever, but it also seems like it requires a lot of, research and organization.
It does take some effort,
Yeah.
but the rewards can be significant. Sabatier shares an anecdote in the book about how he was able to get free first-class tickets to Europe using this method.
Wow, that's impressive. Okay, so we've covered housing, transportation, two of the biggest expenses most people have. Let's move on to the third one, food.
This is an area where Sabatier takes a slightly different approach. He emphasizes the importance of considering the value of your time. He introduces this concept of convenience calculations, where you weigh the potential savings against the time and effort required to achieve them.
So it's not always about finding the absolute cheapest option. Sometimes it makes more sense to pay a little extra for convenience.
Exactly. If you're earning a good hourly rate, spending an hour clipping coupons might not be the most efficient use of your time. You could potentially earn more money during that hour than you save on groceries.
That's a good point. It's all about finding a balance, right?
Yeah.
That works for your individual circumstances and priorities.
Right.
But surely there are ways to save on food without turning it into a second job.
Of course. Sabatier offers a lot of practical tips in the book. For instance, buying in bulk can often save you money in the long run, especially for non-perishable items.
Yeah, that makes sense, but I live in a small apartment, so I'm not sure I have the space for all that bulk buying.
That's a common challenge. But there are workarounds. Sabatier recommends taking advantage of online subscriptions for things like household goods and frequently used groceries. Services like Amazon Subscribe and Save can deliver these items to your door on a regular schedule, often at a discounted price.
That's a great idea. It would save me trips to the store, probably prevent impulse purchases too.
Exactly.
What are some other simple strategies that people can use to lower their food costs?
Consider growing your own herbs or vegetables. If you have the space, even a small balcony garden can provide you with fresh, healthy produce at a fraction of the supermarket cost. And if you do enjoy cooking, consider it an investment in your health and well-being rather than a chore.
I love that perspective. It's not just about saving money, it's about enjoying the process too.
Exactly.
What about eating out? I know a lot of people struggle with, keeping those expenses under control.
Sabatier suggests looking for meal clubs or joining loyalty programs that offer discounts or rewards. He also recommends buying discounted gift cards through online resellers. You can often find gift cards for your favorite restaurants at a lower price than their face value, which can add up to significant savings over time.
Yeah, it sounds like there are so many creative ways to save on food without, sacrificing enjoyment or convenience. And I think, I'm starting to see how all these strategies fit together.
Yeah.
It's not about being cheap. It's about being intentional with your spending and making choices that align with, your values and your priorities.
Exactly. And by focusing on those, big ticket items, housing, transportation, and food, you free up, more resources for the things that really matter to you, whether it's saving for retirement or traveling the world or pursuing your passions.
Yeah, it's about creating a life that feels abundant, not restricted.
Right.
And I think one of the most powerful takeaways from this book is the realization that financial freedom, it's achievable for anyone who's willing to put in the effort.
Absolutely. Sabatier's story is proof that you don't need, a six-figure salary or a trust fund to achieve financial independence. It's about making smart choices, being persistent, and having the right mindset.
He really encourages readers to shift their thinking from scarcity to abundance. It's not about what you can't afford. It's about, finding creative solutions and opening yourself up to new possibilities.
And that brings us back to Sabatier's thought-provoking question. Where could you potentially live rent-free? It's a challenge to step outside the norms,
Yeah.
to explore those kind of unconventional options
Yeah.
that we often dismiss without a second thought.
Yeah, maybe it's house sitting in a different city or country. Maybe it's, house hacking your way to passive income. Maybe it's something like entirely different that we haven't even considered yet.
Exactly. The point is, there are more options available to us
Yeah.
than we often realize.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of, opening our minds to those possibilities and taking action.
So, as we wrap up this deep dive
Mm.
into financial freedom, what's like the one piece of advice you'd give to our listeners who are feeling inspired to take control of their finances?
I would encourage them to analyze their own spending habits. Where are your biggest expenses? What areas could you potentially optimize? Even small adjustments can yield significant results over time. Remember, financial freedom is a journey, not a destination.
Yeah, it's about making, conscious choices each day that move you closer to your goals. And the great thing is, even small steps can make a big difference in the long run. So thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We hope you've gained some valuable insights and are feeling empowered to take charge of your financial journey.
And remember, the power to create the life you want is within your reach. It starts with making informed decisions and taking action.
Until next time, keep learning, keep exploring, keep on diving deep.